Automatic transmissions.
Yep.
I interviewed Flash Metroid, Robin Palm, who used to run the Civil War tournaments, and I had a few other guests, but I don't really remember who. Ryan Hunter. Ryan Hunter is another person. Like, eventually we're gonna have guests on this show as well, and we'll talk about other gaming categories, like within fighting games, and even more. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
Great. Like Ryan Hunter, for example, or even someone like Kizzy K. You can have both those guys on, and we can talk about Guilty Gear.
Yeah.
Because I had some experiences with it when I was in Japan. It was great.
Yeah, good game. I'm really close friends with the anime community here in New York. Like Minus and TSB Blaze and A3 Religion and those guys.
I met Minus briefly at East Coast Throwdown. Yeah, the same one that we kind of briefly commentated with together.
Yeah.
It was a room, I think you were in there too. Defeat Lee, Minus, and I was playing Jury in the casual setting. And I did the jump cancel V-trigger off of a command grab.
Yeah.
I got hype and I screamed into a pillow.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Minus is really cool, man.
Yeah. Really.
There's a lot of, it seems like the anime community has a lot of diverse characters. We like sort of stereotype them into almost as if like the way we stereotype Smash players.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there's a lot of really great people who I know who play like Guilty Gear and such.
Yep.
There's a lot of weird people, but there's also a lot of weird people that play Street Fighter.
Yeah. Weirdos are just part of the FGC, man. That's just part of the diversity.
So I guess we can get started. Why not?
Yeah.
What's going on, folks? I'm AutoMattock, and today we're starting the show. We don't have a really good name for it, but I think it'll be a really good thing for the community to have two diverse, two minds that have an analytical approach to fighting games, tend to be more objective and figuring out what's actually there. So we got a new show, me and Javits.
What's up, guys? I mean, I'll give it.
So we got a lot to talk about, but as far as like the radio skills, we're gonna work on the synergy, and that'll all come together, no problem. But I'm very happy that we've been talking about doing this for a long time.
Yeah, man.
So
I'm happy it's finally coming together, even though it came out of a whim. Just to let you guys know, AutoMattock hit me up yesterday, like, hey man, we're gonna do this podcast, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just go for it. So.
I had to strike when the iron was hot, because all of the Twitter drama, quote unquote, all that was happening was like, man, I gotta talk to somebody about this,
Yeah.
Because there's so many different opinions, there's so many emotionally driven responses, and I don't like my main motivation yesterday and the things that I was posting, the videos that I was trying to quote unquote prove was that the scientific approach is a glaring flaw in the way that people discuss or try to dissect games like Street Fighter V, and that they don't go about it in a way that's proving anything, or I feel like they're not asking the right questions, and they're letting the way they feel about something get in the way of finding out what the truth is. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to really make this podcast, so that we can not only have a personal interaction with our audiences, but I mean in-depthly discuss whatever we're working on, or just add a little personal touch and to be more precise in what we do.
Yeah.
And promote how to do what we do. That's what I feel is really important.
Yeah, man. If people could come away from watching this with something that's going to help them with their own approach to fighting games and how they want to discover new things, that's a win for us. So, and a win for them too. So,
that's kind of the point. There's a lot to discuss in terms of how there's the save it for nationals kind of mentality, which I mean there's complete validity to doing that as well, but there's also I wouldn't take away from the aspect of teaching other people and communicating with what you're actually doing too.
Yeah, like that. It depends on what your goal is, because if you're a sponsored competitor and you're trying to win, it's probably in your best interest to probably keep some of the your discoveries to yourself until it gets broken down later on by others. But if you're not in that position and you just want to see the community improve collectively, and you want to see the metagame of a particular game evolve, then that's why you share it. And that's kind of like, I think, the role that you and I do, that we both do still compete here and there, but We just kind of more interested in like the development of the game and how it,
Absolutely.
gets to the next layers, and the more layers, the more interesting it becomes.
I mean, we're gonna get into like the subject area at hand here, but I do want to touch on this subject because it's really important. Because I feel like leveling up the community. I mean, there certainly is a argument for keeping it to yourself and doing the best for yourself. I can't knock anybody who has that philosophy. But I also want to not like make a point, but I want to observe that the fighting game community, we're not really in the best shape in terms of, like, if you compare us to other esports. And I think what might help that is if we have more informative players, more people who are able to teach more players and bring in new people to the scene and contribute to the player base so that we can accurately analyze and have good assessments of what the game is actually at.
No, I agree. Just getting more information out there and accurate information is just gonna, kind of legitimize and make everything more professional. Because right now, sometimes like a lot of information is just a little piecemeal. Like everything is not really organized.
Yeah.
And having like a unified platform where you can get clear and accurate information, I think is really important.
So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get into the first subject we got here. It's just really me and Javits, the subject of how we came to play video games and fighting games in the community, how we became friends. We've known each other for quite a while, but also leading up to how we've come to the analytical mindset and discovering how we discovering or talking about the way we discover things in Street Fighter and other games and that kind of thing. So I'll open up the floor to you, my friend. Like, how did you? It's like we're interviewing each other at this point. How did you first start playing video games? What brought you to like Chinatown Fair? How did people start to begin to know you about being a more analytical player?
So I started playing just like most people that started with Street Fighter. Back as a kid. Street Fighter 2, Super Nintendo. Just playing at home with my friends and family, with my brother and stuff like that. But I didn't really start going into Chinatown Fair. First time I went there was I want to say in like 98 or 99. And I was like 12 years old, and I was just like overwhelmed. I didn't even know how to play on joystick at the time. So it was like a really overwhelming experience going to like an arcade of that level, because I had been to arcades before, but it was just like your local. Here in New York, we would have them in our local grocery store, or like the laundromat, or your local chicken place or something like that, and you would play
7-Eleven, the Food Line, any kind of grocery
store.
Yeah,
any kind of like simple.
Nothing but bad kids.
Yeah. So I used to play here and there. I wasn't like a big arcade head, but I would go from time to time, but I was mainly still like more of a console player at the time. Mm-hmm. And then actually, a lot of people don't know this, but in high school, I actually got really into first-person shooters, and I used to be on a Counter-Strike team. And
I've heard that story from a lot of people, even including myself.
So
I skipped school one time to play Rainbow Six.
So yeah, I didn't really, I didn't quit on fighting games, but I wasn't as into it throughout high school and in the beginning of college. And it wasn't until in college they had a little gaming group called Video Game Alliance, that they would have little tournaments in the cafeteria, and they would have like Third Strike tournaments, and I knew about Third Strike, and I was like, that game's cool, but I didn't really play it too much. But then just like
not your cup of tea.
Yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea at the time, but then I started getting into it, and just the competitive aspect of seeing like, all these kids, I'm like, man, these kids don't know fighting games, man. They're just there, playing games. But then I got my ass beat. I think the first person that won one of those tournaments was Tenchi. Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Oro. Yeah. Or at least I know him as an Oro player.
Yeah, he played Oro back then, and he had more of that Chinatown Fair background. He came and he played on a joystick. Everybody was on pads. So that kind of like fueled me to get back into FGC. And then I started going back to Chinatown Fair again. And this time I was older, so I'm able to go on my own, use my own money, things like that. And then that was right.
It's like you came back to the gym, you had like a bicep or two, you're flexing like, oh, I can play on this little joystick here. Let's see what's going on. Yeah. And then next thing you know, Chinatown Fair. I know it's not not always a friendly environment.
Yeah. So it was cool. It was like really the competitive aspect that brought me back because while the first person shooter games were cool, one thing that I didn't like too much about playing in a team based format was that you're not fully in control of your wins and losses. It also depends on how good your team is and how good your teamwork is, basically. But I always kind of liked that aspect of fighting games where if you lose, you're accountable for your own losses, and you could any adjustments that you have to make are on you. So that's kind of like what sucked me back into fighting games, and there it is, Chinatown Fair, and that was right around the time when Street Fighter 4 was announced. They announced it, I want to say, like end of 2006 or 2007, but it didn't release until 2008, summer. And when that game came out, it was just...
It changed everything.
Yeah, it changed everything. It was like, it went from an arcade scene that it was still alive, but it was not as thriving as it was like in the late 90s and early 2000s. So but when Street Fighter 4 came back, it was like it was so packed in there. There were lines to play the game. There were like bigger tournaments popping up, and that's kind of like what led you and I to meet because I was at the time I was pretty active on the SRK forums, and I think I saw your name pop up a couple of times. I knew like that you were a 3S player from that region and all that, but it wasn't until I think we went to probably Seasons Beatings or maybe a little bit before that. But
Seasons Beatings was what came to mind, but maybe Sensation too. Sensation might have happened, but Sensation did happen before that. So if you were there, then
yeah,
I have some fond memories of Sensation.
yeah. So yeah, it goes back that far. Sensation was like end of 2008, early 2009 around there. And
yeah, I'm no good with dates. I just remember some of the things that happened, like the old jab headbutt. That was when the legendary Gutex shimmy started,
Yeah, that's when for those that don't know, the quote unquote Gutex shimmy, that started as Sensation when Gutex won the very first battle between East and West Coast in Street Fighter 4. He beat Justin. Justin was still living in New York at the time. And he also not to get all FGC Illuminati, but I think that Gutex had his hands on the game a little bit more than Justin at that point because they had arcades in California. But I could be totally wrong about that. Yeah, that's probably accurate. He seemed like more in control of how the game worked and all that. We had like only limited time when Perfect Sin would let us play sometimes, but and it wasn't until that tournament that that rivalry just really fueled again. So, yeah, that's kind of around the time that we met, and ever since then, the reason the reason people started knowing me is that I didn't initially start playing Street Fighter 4 as a Balrog player, but when I did eventually switch to Balrog, I had a very different style. A lot of people played really rushed on with him. They just thought that that's the character he had to, the kind of character he had to be, because that's how he was in Street Fighter 4. I mean, Super Turbo.
You mean Turbo?
Yeah, he was more of a rushed on character in the old games, so they kind of had this idea that that's how he had to be. But I guess being from the East Coast, I kind of took a very defensive, slow style with him. And it was really annoying for a lot of players that had to play against me, but it was really effective also. So I
remember, now you're kind of jogging the memory banks. I remember the play style of just this. Like, how do I get to him? How am I supposed to...
Yeah, so I played like a really slow, annoying style that was just effective. And it's a style that was like really popular in New York, like with players like Arturo and... it goes back to like as far as Eddie Lee, but like a very defensive, like you shell up and you try to force mistakes, and then you just frustrate the opponent until they die, pretty much. And that style was working for me a lot back then. Um, so that's kind of like how what set me apart from the other Balrog players that were like trying to rush down and play really fast with them.
So I have a question about that. Do you feel like you did that to set yourself? Did you do this intentionally to set yourself apart from other players, or is this you just finding a different approach that maybe you saw something that other people didn't, so you were expressing that, or maybe you're playing to your own strength? What was your thought process behind playing Balrog in that way?
It was kind of playing to my own strengths, but it was playing basically from like out because at the time I would take from like little things that I learned from a lot of players. So before Justin started using Rufus, he kind of also played in that style, like very annoying and defensive, and that's what we had to play against. So we saw that it was working for him. So it kind of just translated to my game, like, okay, I'm just gonna annoy people to death and make them frustrated. So that worked, so let me try it, and it was working. So that's just kind of how my game evolved at the time.
That's crazy. So you have a lot of influence, and you see that all the time. There's nothing. I don't think it's not only that there's nothing wrong with taking other people's ideas and making them your own. It's kind of a requirement if you want to be on that expedited road to success in Street Fighter.
Yeah.
You see, like especially nowadays, we have like optimal strategies. There's not a lot of diverse ways to play a character. It's like Street Fighter 5. It's like almost a script. So once you find that script, you pretty much have the way to do it. You just got to practice that script, identify it, and expand, fine-tune it. But generally, there's a right strategy to play characters. Like, I don't really have a good example off the top of my head. But Street Fighter 5, it does seem like most characters are playing the way that they were intended to be.
Yeah. And one thing about that, though, is that there's like this misconception, I think, that if you see, like, for example, a defensive player like me or an offensive player like, let's say, Combo Fiend, that they're only good in that area. And that's not actually true. It's just that they at that given time, they're choosing to play that way. But a good example that shows that some players are good to switch it up is like someone like F-Champ, who plays, pretty defensive with, like, Dalsim, but then we've seen what he's capable of in Marvel games when he decides to rush down.
Yeah, he adjusts according to the situation. So yeah, I think that's the most important attribute to have.
Same thing with Justin. Like, when he played Third Strike, he used Chun, very lame defensive style of Chun, but then Street Fighter 4, he switched to Rufus, he played a little bit of Abel. So there's like sometimes players may be choosing to play one way at a certain time, but then it doesn't mean that they're incapable of playing other ways. And like when Street Fighter 5 came out, I kind of wanted to do that, like play a completely different style, and that's why I played mostly grapplers. Like right now, a lot of people, since they know me from the SF4 days, they assume that I play Balrog, but I actually use Laura because I wanted to switch to grapplers and learn a different way to approach the game. And I think it made me better as a player to kind of like switch up my style and not just
absolutely
to only playing defensive.
In the same way, not to make this about me, but I switched to Hugo. Some people know me as a big body player because they see me play Hugo in Street Fighter 4. But the way that happened was because in Third Strike, I originally played Yang. But then Street Fighter 4 came out, and then I wasn't really playing Third Strike that much. But then when I went back to Third Strike, I wanted to make it a valuable learning experience, and I wanted to play a character that I felt was very difficult and did not play to my strengths at all. And that was Hugo. And that character is really, really fun for me to play. I totally acknowledge he's not top tier or he's easy, but I learned a whole lot about myself and how I operate, and I learned a lot more about my players and how they play by playing a character that's forced to play at their pace. So it's absolutely a good experience to play a character that is that's totally out of your comfort zone. So I would 100% agree on that front.
So you tell me, how did you get started and leading up to when we met and kind of where you are right now?
So I guess we can take it back to the beginning. I started playing with we'll go even further back when I was really young. Talking like 5, 6, 7, or 8, somewhere around there when Street Fighter came out in like Super Nintendo and the arcades. I didn't play in the arcades much back then. Sometimes I go out with my parents and I see like a Marvel superheroes machine, that kind of thing, and I'll be fascinated by it, right? But I early on, I was playing with my brothers, kinda. Now, I'm the youngest of 5 brothers by quite a bit. My next oldest brother is about, I don't even know top of my head, like maybe 8 or 9 years older than I am. So, but I am like 5 or 6. They're in their teenage years, and it's like, I don't want to hang out with this kid. So basically, I would get ignored, and they didn't want to play Street Fighter. They just want to play, they want to keep it to themselves, which I don't blame them. It's all good. So I really didn't have that bond. I didn't have that, like, so I was really fascinated with the game, and I wanted to have that relationship with, you know, a friend or a family member. But I didn't really get that, because it was like, you know, they would want to play to themselves. I'm too young. So I would play things like Super Punch-Out on my own and try to figure out those earlier games. And as I got older, I still had that like desire to play with other people and figure out whatever it is, because you know you look up to your older brothers and whatever they're doing, you want to do it too. Like they were really into like fighting sports. One of my brothers, he's big into I guess it wasn't really called MMA at the time, but he was kickboxing, he was boxing, he joined the military so he could do it. He's currently contracting overseas, doing security work. He's doing really good things. So they're really into like combat. So I got really into combat. To this day, I still have a poster of Bruce Lee in my parents', you know, my room back in the house. Like Bruce Lee, Dragon Ball, just stuff like that. So I was really, the whole fighting genre was really cool to me. So it wasn't until I was in like in middle school or high school, I started playing Third Strike with my brother. We were playing on PS2, I think. I was playing with a pad because, you know, I always wanted to go to the arcades, but I couldn't really do that because I didn't have a mode of transportation until I was much older. But we would play all the time. Maybe if you come back from the SRK days, my brother is Dude 120%. He posted a lot in the Image Mismatch forums. He used to make a lot of graphics for people. So me and him played every day. During a commercial, whatever TV show we're watching, we'll play Third Strike and whatever. And Third Strike Online kind of came out for the Xbox, not the Xbox 360, the bulletproof, thick, double-decker Xbox, the vanilla Xbox. So we played quite a bit on that, and then that's when I started going around that time to arcades. Now, I live in somewhat of an obscure area in North Carolina, but I'm really lucky to have really interesting people and to have arcades. To this day, we have arcades. And I always wanted to go because those people were so cool to me. They're really like inspirational figures. They were like the guys that I wanted to be a part of that community. But I was really young, and I was pretty shy, too. Well, not really shy, but not exactly... I wasn't outspoken. I was really quiet. So I got to play with my brother, and then I eventually went to the arcades and started playing with them. The first person... This is where I'm going to get into like how I really learned how to play fighting games. The first person who really taught me how to play fighting games was a guy... he goes by Jabroni Kenshin. He's actually my step-uncle now, which is pretty funny. He really directed my reactions in the right place, because he would do something with Urian that was unsafe, and I would punish it, but all the other things in between, I wasn't applying that to just like maybe in the zoning, with punishing as a zoning. So he would do like a fireball with Urian because he's an ST player. He's really old. So I would super under it every time, and he would be like, man, I can't believe this guy every time. And then it would always be the case where I was about to lose, and then I would beat, they would call me a cockroach, because I would always beat people. He couldn't kill me. So whenever I was low on health, I would turn Super Saiyan. So that guy taught me more about how to think about what my opponent is doing and then responding accordingly. And then I met, within like, you know, meeting more people in Third Strike, I met a guy named Cajun Strike. Now, he played Makoto. Makoto is a character that you have to understand what your opponent is thinking. Otherwise, she will command grab you. She will do 100% stun. You will pay for making the wrong choice when a lot of this, it can turn into something that you can't react to because it's a command grab. She has dash. So you have to pay really close attention to what your opponent is thinking. You have to anticipate. And then you have to do things like pay attention to their resources. Does she have a full meter? If she command grabs me outside of the corner, am I going to be okay? So you have to really understand the chess of the whole situation. So that's what I learned from him. So I got the reactions and directing it through Kevin, and then I got the psychology from Cajun Strike or Alex Roski. And then I started looking into frame data because of a guy named Eric Kim. And you might remember Eric Kim from the GameStop National Tournament. He did quite well in Street Fighter 4. He was like the first boss in Third Strike for me in terms of like tournament. You know, if you saw him at a tournament, you're like, oh shit, how are we gonna pull this off? So we're like kind of cheering for Roski's, like, you know, just to win that mirror match. But I think it was Sensation where he was talking to me about frame data in Third Strike, and it was a totally foreign concept to me. I didn't know anything about how to count frames or whatever, and maybe I did have some of that. I don't need to do it. Frame data, that's for, you know, I'm better than, I don't need frame data, you know, that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
So that got me looking into it, but it wasn't really until Street Fighter 4 that I started to really understand what it is, how it works, and all that kind of thing. Because, you know, like certain fun facts. Chun-Li's crouching jab, 2 or 3 frames, really fast, that kind of thing. But you never really look at everything in the whole scope of how everything affects each other, how to apply frame data in footsies, that kind of thing, like the video I put out yesterday. I didn't really start looking into that kind of concept until Street Fighter 4, and I wasn't even really that good at it. It wasn't until recently in Street Fighter 5 that I feel like I'm working in all the different angles and encompassing all the things that I know about Street Fighter and fighting games in general. So in Street Fighter 4 is where I felt like I was starting to put all these new ideas together. I was a good player. I established myself pretty well in Third Strike. I won a few locals. I traveled a lot. I did pretty good. And then Street Fighter 4 is when I started to become more known, like mainstream, whatever mainstream was at the time, and with my Gen play. And at the time, I didn't pick Gen because he was different or anything like that. It was more because I played Yang in Third Strike. And I was like, oh, that's Yang's master. I should, you know, let's see what he has to offer. I thought it'd be really cool. And I wanted to play him in Alpha. I wanted to play Gen in Alpha for the longest time just because he seemed like a really cool character. And then I started seeing the things. I started putting some stuff together, like standing medium kick, because everyone thought Gen was trash and vanilla. And I was like, do you see this middle kick button? You see how fast it is? You see how much range? It's bufferable. Now, when you combine that with using the hands and then you focus attack, dash cancel off of that, I figured out you have frame advantage off of that. You can combo off of it. And then after that, I was like, how can that be bad? There's no way. And he has a solid anti-air. He's got decent movement. It's like, no way he's a bad character. So I started playing him, and I did pretty well. And even if I don't do that well, it's still a spectacle to see somebody playing Gen and against Daigo and not getting his shit pushed in, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then I had the Evo. I had some success at Evo that year. But Street Fighter 4 is where I started learning that. And then Marvel 3, I learned how to manage your resources better. Even though I wasn't really playing Marvel like that, I still learned from it. Cross Tekken is when I started putting those two things together, and I started learning more about resource management and frame data and putting those two ideas together, along with the psychology, directing the reactions, that kind of thing. Now, if there's one thing that I can credit Street Fighter 5 for, is that it pushed my scientific abilities to the limit, because you feel like you need it. You feel like I can't rely on those reactions, the interaction, the psychology. I can't. The data is more important in Street Fighter 5 than, to me, it's more important than it's ever been in a fighting game. And that's a whole different subject in itself.
Yeah.
But that's really the timeline of things, that how I gotten from a kid who wanted to play Street Fighter with his brothers to where I'm at now, who's basically a guy who goes to school online and makes videos for Street Fighter using my GI Bill.
Yeah, man.
That's really it.
So, but yeah, to your point about Street Fighter 5, though, that I do agree that it's very important to know everything about how the engine works, because the game can be so oppressive sometimes that you have to really capitalize on when it's your turn and try to not let the opponent play, pretty much, because if you let them up and they hit you, you might die. They might do the same thing to you. So it's really important to really know how to capitalize on every situation and kind of cover all their knockdowns and things like that, all their escapes, just because the game is just so very offensive and volatile.
Volatile, that's the word for it. It's like it's hard to say fairly the argument that it's more about what you know, because that's always been true. If you know more about a game, any game, you're gonna do better than somebody who doesn't know anything, and who's just now playing it. So I think with the sentiment of that in Street Fighter V, that you know more than your opponent does, you can do better than they are. It's just that it's more powerful than it has been. If you just have the data, if you know what to do and you just do that, you're on a very good level. You can compete with quite a few players. I feel like that mid-range player does better against the higher skilled player than ever before, and it's for a lot of reasons, because we have the information out there and because the game is easier. I think it's obvious that the game is easier than the previous Street Fighters.
Yeah. Yeah, and
so,
and I think that it's not even so much that it's easier, but it's just also more limited. So there's not that much variety in situations, and not a lot of escapes and stuff like that. So if you put,
it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, you could put a really strong player in a simple 50-50 situation, and they're gonna have to guess just like any lower level player. So
doesn't matter who you are.
Exactly. There's a lot of that.
You can be Daigo Umehara and get command grab 3 to 4 times in the corner.
Right. So there's a lot of situations like that where you're just, kind of guessing, and that doesn't necessarily make it a bad game, but it just makes there's less options. So when you have a game with less variables, less options, there's more opportunity for.
You can lose to Lupe Fiasco. So we can talk.
Right.
We can talk about Whiff Punishing as the next subject. So what is a Whiff Punish? I talked about this in the YouTube video that I made last night. I think Whiff Punishing is a term that gets thrown around maybe unfairly. We don't really... When you see one person do a move and then the other person hits them because they did that move, we're like, that's a Whiff Punish. But I don't think that's really accurately describing what always happens, because sometimes you hit them as a response. You see them with that move, and then you Whiff Punish them. So you're Whiff Punishing on reaction. So there's also Whiff Punishing somebody because 2 moves just collide, maybe haphazardly. It's about the intent and impact. But in regards to Street Fighter V and Whiff Punishing, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on how I want to say calibrated, but in compared to a game like CVS2, Third Strike, Super Turbo, where do you feel like Whiff Punishing is? How high of a priority do you feel that attribute is of a fighting game?
So besides so there's a couple of things that go into Whiff Punishing in Street Fighter V, and why there's like this feeling of like, oh, you're not able to Whiff Punish, and in reality you are able to Whiff Punish, because if you look at certain players like Punk or Momochi, they're still Whiff Punishing just like any other game. But overall, the thing with the game is that there aren't too many characters with good range on their normals compared to previous iterations of the game. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times you have to play footsies from a range where you're just kind of anticipating and using the priority system to work for you, rather than you trying to react to something and then Whiff Punish it on reaction, because there's not really a lot of range in order to do that. Because in order to get into a range to Whiff Punish, you have to get into a range where you could get hit by attacks, because attacks are so short. So it creates this feeling like you're just running into each other if you're trying to Whiff Punish the old way. So instead of Whiff Punishing the old way, people just kind of throwing out attacks until something hits, and they're using more priority system to work for them.
That's also a contributing factor, is the priority system. So when you have an attack that's stronger and it collides with a weaker strength attack, if you have a Fierce Punch and a jab, if they happen on the same frame, the Fierce Punch will not only win, but it'll counter. It'll crush counter if it has a crush counter property.
Right.
So you have a faster attack, but since they're hitting at the same time, the stronger attack will work, and you get higher reward. So this it contributes to the mentality that you should hit heavier attacks because you have more reward, and it's hard to Whiff Punish those attacks. So what I want to point out is about Ken's sweep in Third Strike and in Street Fighter V. I'm not doing this to like cherry pick or anything. I'm just demonstrating the difference in frame data, and I should also show the hitboxes for this kind of thing. But in Street Fighter V, the startup of Ken's sweep is 8 startup, and the move is 33 total active frames. So we got 8 and 33. In Third Strike, and this data might be off by a frame, it's 2 frames faster, And what is it? 6,526. Let me do the math on that. 6,526 minus 1 is 36. So we're looking at 36 and 33. So in third strike, it's 3 frames longer and it's 2 frames faster. So this means that it's easier to whiff punish with, and it's also easier to whiff punish. And the game doesn't have like the 6.5 frames of lag. So it's also, in the context of the game, easier to react to.
Right.
So we do see, at least in that closed, that vacuum, that example, a tool that is used for punishing in footsies and to be used as a footsie tool, it's better in an older game.
Yeah, and also one thing to notice that's interesting is that Third Strike actually does have priority system, but the reason why in that game it didn't play as much of an impact as it does in Street Fighter V is because of the crush counter system. Because if you're playing footsies in Third Strike and your heavy attack beats a lower strength attack like a medium or light, you're not getting a crush counter for it. You're just getting that single attack unless you cancel it into some sort of special move. But even then, there wasn't that many moves that were leading into full combos or things like that. Whereas in Street Fighter,
yeah. If Urian hits you with a standing hard punch, he hits you with standing hard punch in Third Strike. That's it.
Yeah, that's
Street Fighter 5.
Yeah,
he hits you with this shit.
Yeah, in Street Fighter 5,
and he crush counters you. He dashes up and gets crouching fierce.
Yeah,
man, I remember the first time I saw that, I was losing my mind. Like, are you serious with that?
Yeah. So, and that's one of the examples of a normal that's like relatively hard to whiff punish, has pretty good recovery in Street Fighter V, has a great hitbox that extends really far out. So you have to, if you're trying to play footsies against that button, you have to be pretty far to not get hit by it. But then if you're pretty far to not get hit by it, then you can't whiff punish him if he whiffs it because he recovers fast and he pulls back. So it creates a situation where the Urian has low risk in consistently fishing for a crush counter over. And at most,
it changes the way you approach.
Yeah, and at most you're gonna get your own sweep. But if he hits his crush counter, he might get a full combo. So
and V trigger meter.
Yeah, and V trigger meter. So it's definitely creates a very different dynamic. It's not necessarily that it's impossible to whiff punish. It is possible. Some characters do have the range, but it's just not as common to be able to whiff punish Urian standing fierce. Whereas in the older game, that's similar interaction was not that big of a deal because the Urian player is not getting a big reward for abusing a really strong button. So, you know, it's not the first time that really strong buttons have been in fighting games. Like, even in Third Strike, Chun-Li had a lot of great buttons. She had crouching medium kick. She had standing fierce. She had back fierce. But
there's also a parry mechanic to defend against those in the neutral, which was, if you treat parry as if it's a zoning tool,
yeah,
it's very fast, but it has some risk reward attached to it because if you parry forward, they can hit you low. If you parry low, they can hit you with high attacks such as Chun-Li's Far Fierce.
Right.
But you can also have unique approach. I don't want to get too into Third Strike, but you can also have unique approaches where you parry forward outside of their low forward. So if you walk up with the parry motion, you'll parry their fierce punch. But if they do a low forward, you'll be out of range. So you can approach it in different ways, and then you can tie in some other things as well.
Right. And then the little cherry on top that adds to all of this is the input lag that Street Fighter V, even if it's just slightly, they did improve it in the first year by I think a frame and a half or something like that. But it still does have just a little bit more input lag than the older games. And how much of an impact, that's hard to say, but it's definitely there. And, in a fighting game, one frame can make all the difference. So, and some players are more sensitive to that. Some players doesn't affect them as much. But it's definitely a factor that, if we're going to be talking about all the little differences, it is there.
It really is something that's hard to evaluate and fairly assess if it's how much it contributes. Because I would think that you can calibrate the frame delay and just adjust the frame data. But maybe there's more to it than I'm foreseeing. But you could just make the moves longer and faster, and then you should be able to whiff punish just the same. But it seems like it's done intentionally. They may have calibrated the frame data to work exactly. Like, it might be functioning as it's intended. It might be just completely normal operation.
Right.
So, I don't know. This may be the way that they want it to be played. I don't know if we'll see any adjustments in the future. But I wanted to point out earlier when we were talking about using the priority system as a change in the way we approach footsies. I remember when I was playing Abigail, I was using my crouching jab. I was using my crouching jab to zone people out. And it was a Urian player, and his answer to me using my crouching jab, my 6th frame, fierce punch. He was like in the middle of nowhere. You know what? I know how to challenge this. Let me crouch counter it from over. Like, oh, that's footsies. That's how we play it now. It was like such a confident decision, too. He's like, oh, I know what to do. I hit my crush counter button.
Yeah, so that also is what makes footsies feel a little bit strange in Street Fighter 5, that they get so much reward for, like, you know, with a relatively low risk move. So
it's hard to be fair about it and not sound like you're complaining about the way it is.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it feels a certain way when you don't know if your opponent's intentions are matching the results that he's getting. That's what I feel is one of the main issues with the Street Fighter 5 mentality as a whole.
But what are your thoughts on, like, just the ability to whiff punish? Like, not necessarily like the risk and reward involved, but just like, does it feel responsive to you? What do you think of the ranges of normals? What do you think of just the attacks themselves? How effective they are? Are they, you know? What do you think?
I've assessed this in the game very recently. I've been studying this because this really was the biggest turnoff recently for me to, like, decide I'm not really that competitive in Street Fighter 5. I don't pursue a competitive mindset anymore with Street Fighter 5. It's more about analyzing and putting things together for other people so they can. If other people are enjoying it, then I'm gonna get my enjoyment out of enhancing what they enjoy. But that's not me. I don't enjoy playing Street Fighter 5 as it stands right now. As far as like a competitive, I want to be the best at this game. I don't have that anymore. So what changed that was just that footsie thing, the zoning and the neutral, and it felt so confined. It felt like it was eliminated, something that I was pretty good at. I can't do anymore. So I wanted to get down to the bottom of it, and I wanted to see what exactly you can whiff punish. And this is exactly what I've been talking about in the YouTube video that I made yesterday about using the frame data to analyze what you're able to react to. So the way I measure this, I use Urian's Aegis Reflector, which is 5 frames of startup, and it requires no directional input, so it's not contributing to the startup of something. So I know that I have a 5-frame startup move, and then if I hit the activation, it's gonna punish something with that 5 frames. So, and you can see here that Urian's V trigger 5 frames of startup, and this is the far Aegis. So what I did, and I think Nash is one of the best examples. What I did was I took a list of total active frame moves, and then I went down which one I could punish and which ones I could not punish with a 5-frame startup move. So, it looks like your Skype froze up, amigo. Did we lose Javits? Might have lost Javits. There he goes. We back?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay, so I used that 5-frame startup move in Aegis Reflector, and I attempted to punish things. Now, there's obvious things that you would be able to punish, like a crouching hard kick with Nash. This is 33 total active frames. So it was no problem at all to whiff punish this. So what I did in training mode, I should probably show this. Actually, I did in the video. I just had him whiff a button, and then I had him hold block immediately, and then for a long duration of time. And then I play that replay, and then I don't know when it's going to happen. So then, as soon as I see it happen, I react to it with the 5-frame move. So then I kept going down the line, and then eventually I came to the point where I couldn't. It was down to a frame. It was like when it was difference of 17, 5. So once it was like 22 frames. Once we got around to this crouching medium punch or this side knee attack, I could not whiff punish that on reaction. So that told me when I have a difference of 22 minus the 5 startup of my Aegis Reflector, that I could not whiff punish a certain amount of moves. I mean, there's some obvious examples. If they do a crouching light punch, and then I try to punish with Aegis, That's a 7 frame difference. My reactions are not 7. I don't think anybody can do that. 7 frames. So you want to keep going up and down the line to see what you are actually capable of, what's consistent. And another interesting thing that I found was that when I played on pad, I could improve this by 1 frame. I could improve it by 1 frame. So it's almost as if I was faster on pad. But the truth, I think what is actually happening is that when you play on a pad, your fingers are right on top of the buttons.
Right.
They are comfortably overlapping where you're inputting whatever it is that you're inputting. When you're playing on a stick,
yeah, your hands hover. You hover
your
over
hands
the button.
hover, or you're traveling from one light kick to light punch. And that, since, deducing from that takes about a frame to do. So it's like I'm taking away from that. And then the other way that I felt that this is true is that when I put my fingers directly on the hitbox buttons, I could then match my results with the pad. I could then get down to about 16 or 17 frames difference. So with that in mind, if we take Urian standing hard punch, the example we used earlier, and I think that was about 32 frames. Where is he at? Urian. So if I take that number where I know that I can confidently and consistently react to something, and again, this is a baseline. I'm not always going to be able to react. I had to be ready for it. I had to anticipate it. I had to actually see it. But it gives me a number to deal with. So if I take the standing hard punch and then I subtract that number that I know I'm comfortable with, if I take 32 and I take away 17, that's going to give me the startup of a move that I could whiff punish it with, potentially. So if I take 32 minus this startup of 17, or the differential 17, I need a 15 startup move to whiff punish with. 15 or better. So with Urian, I could whiff punish standing hard punch with my own standing hard punch. But then I had to look at if I'm even in range to do this. So this gave me a way to assess what is possible to whiff punish. So then if I look at something with a smaller startup, or excuse me, a smaller total frame, total animation frame, if I look at something like crouching medium punch, it's 10 frames slower. Standing medium punch is better. 20. Standing medium punch is 20 total active frames. If I subtract my 17 from that, I need a 3-frame move to whiff punish. I can't whiff punish standing medium punch. So what that means is I either have to counter hit it or do it proactively. I have to do something before I'm actually seeing the standing medium punch happen.
Right.
So that forces you to play in a way where you don't have the information in front of you to make accurate decisions. In terms of certainty, when you whiff punish something on reaction, if you do it right, you know it'll work every time. If Ken does a crouching roundhouse in third strike and I see it in front of me, I sweep it and I know it's going to work. But if I sweep before I see it, I don't know it's going to work. There's a huge difference between that aspect of whiff punishing, and I think we just kind of blanket term that was a whiff punish, and it's not always necessarily the case.
Yeah. Also, another thing to note, see how you're mentioning the total frames of a move, when it comes to visually processing an animation, some moves don't start animating until a later frame. So even though they might be a total frame count of whatever, let's say above 30, like 35 total frames, visually, if the move doesn't start animating until frame 6 or 7, visually your mind only saw 29 movement frames, or
not going to respond to it. It's just like Nash's dash in the earlier seasons.
So that, I think that's another thing that developers have to kind of keep in mind when designing some of these moves, unless it's intentional. Maybe they want it to be look that fast visually.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of moves like that in Street Fighter V where they're animated in such a way that by the time you can visually process what you just saw, the move is already recovered.
Yep. That's one of the reasons why I found it imperative to develop this kind of test. I don't think it's the best, most accurate test. I can't exactly placebo myself or trust that I'm going to get the 100% accurate results. And I do intend to try this on other people, this Urian Aegis Reflector test. But I needed some semblance of logic and understanding why it feels a bit haphazard in the neutral in Street Fighter V. And it's not just neutral. It's about the knockdowns, the air, the ground game, and how all these different things interact with each other. Because even if I say that in the best possible conditions, it's a sunny day, I got a good night's sleep, got a nice, you know what I'm saying? and I'm able to react to something to the best possible. Even on that day, I had to be ready for everything, and I can't be able to react to separate things at the same speeds. So that's the next step in this test is what slows your reactions down. What kind of stimulus makes you not prepared for things? Because I am a proponent of doing this myself, of influencing what my opponent is thinking about so that they are less likely to react to different things. It's just the easiest example is if you have your opponent focus on the ground game and then you jump at them, it's going to be more challenging for them to anti-air you.
Right.
Just in the same way, I will pretend like I'm playing footsies with somebody just to get them to jump at me. I did this with Urian quite a bit. I would be like hitting crouching medium kick, that kind of thing. But the only thing I'm really thinking about is hitting standing roundhouse to anti-air them. So when you put all these different elements together, how much does your best reaction speed, what is that caliber? How does that really affect all of your other decisions? That's what I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
Juice Man said lower V-trigger 100% slows your reflexes down.
Yeah.
Speaking of lower V-trigger 100%, unless you had something to say on the subject. Sorry to interrupt.
No. I was going to say, you know, using the example that you gave with Urian and the numbers, I think part of what it comes down to though is lack of tools that have enough range to even be able to whiff punish. Because you might have, like, let's say you determine, like, all right, I have 15 frames to do something. You might have 15 frames, but none of your attacks reach, so it doesn't matter that you have those 15 frames. So
exactly what I pointed out in the YouTube video about Karen standing medium kick. I evaluated. I needed a 7-frame move to actually whiff punish her, or better. And her standing medium punch is 5 frames. So it's like, oh, this shouldn't be too bad. Doesn't reach. Can't even get there.
So yeah, I think that's part of the problem. Maybe they need to increase the range slightly on the sweeps, which are usually that's like a universal whiff punish tool that's risky because it's punishable, but it's usually pretty fast, easy to whiff punish, but easy to, like the example that you gave with their strike. It's easy to whiff punish with, but also conversely easy to whiff punish itself. So I think more tools like that should be introduced into the game. Where
I absolutely agree. It's a delicate balance though, because we're seeing this from what we need, but the developers, they see it from how it affects every other thing in the game too. Because I think you have to balance it in terms of more than just what you feel is needed. So if you make a move that's longer, then how does that affect if it's on block or hit? And how does it affect the hurtbox when they block it? Because something like what immediately comes to mind is Karen sweep. If Karen sweeps you from full range, it's very difficult to punish.
Right.
You can do a 4-frame reversal, but that's not always the case. You can't really whiff punish it either. It's probably harder to whiff punish it.
Right.
So if they extend the hurtbox when she does sweep, does that affect her in the footsies where it's easier to whiff punish her?
Yeah.
I don't know how all these things really interact with each other.
Yeah.
It's a lot to digest. I would love to be a part of the process in figuring that out, because we're almost left at the mercy of we have no information. I don't know who's in charge of Street Fighter V.
Right.
I don't know who's really making all the rules and who's saying what is better and why. That's a really good question. But speaking on the subject of Laura and 100% V-trigger and doing a reversal 3 to 4 times in a row and getting crush countered, what do you think about meterless DPs?
So here's my thought on meterless DPs, because so for people that don't know, in Street Fighter V Season 1, only 4 characters had meterless invincible DPs. That was Cammy, Nakali, Ryu, and Ken. So on the face of this issue, you can say, hey, why is this such a big deal on only 4 characters that are in the game? And arguably, only 2 characters are the ones that should even be in discussion whether they should have them or not, and that's the Shotos. Because someone like Cammy and Nakali, they're already extremely oppressive characters on offense. Mm-hmm. So one could argue that giving them an invincible, meterless defensive option will make them too strong. But I think going into
you gotta fold up a leg. Gotta fold up a leg, get your smoking jacket and a little bubble pipe.
Yeah, so
this is what I think about meterless DP. You gotta discuss it like a gentleman.
So I think of it coming from experience of playing so many other different games, and I'm not saying that all the stuff from different games needs to be in Street Fighter V, but just using that experience as a reference point. When, let's say, comparing it to the previous iteration of Street Fighter 4, where there were meterless invincible DPs, and you can make them safe.
And you can get an ultra for them if you're losing the match.
Yeah.
Sagat and Vanilla, I don't want to talk about it.
So let's talk about going into Street Fighter V. They decided, all right, these moves are still in the game, but now you can't FADC them, and on top of not
you can't FADC twice. I'm still salty about that.
Yeah.
Tiger uppercut, dash up. Tiger uppercut, dash up. Tiger uppercut. Really?
Crazy. It was crazy. It was absolute bonkers in Street Fighter 4. So going into Street Fighter 5, the moves they're back in invincible meterless DPs, just like every other Street Fighter game, except I think Third Strike. Only like 2 characters maybe had them in Third Strike. But so they took away the ability to make them safe. That's a good thing, right? It's a plus. No more safe DPs. Everybody's happy, right? And then
they're saying, well, nobody's gonna DP because there's so much risk involved with doing a DP.
And then on top of that, they combine that with the crush counter system, whereas if you do your invincible special move, when you come down, you can get punished by a full crush counter combo, which does a lot of damage, a lot of stun, and gives them a mix-up after. Meterless. So
I think that's great in theory. I think that direction for this game, it's unique, and it feels good to do. Especially when the game first came out, it's like, you're so stupid. Why did you do that?
Right. So
but I'm sorry.
So just to expand on that, they implemented a system that was naturally balanced. It was, you have a move that is invincible, but very risky. Like the risk was raised to a level that has never been seen before in a Street Fighter game for invincible moves. So it's at the highest that it has ever been. So I don't really understand the argument for making that extremely risky move even worse by making that option cost meter. Now, the argument that some people have is, oh, but why should only 4 characters have it when so many characters don't have it? But the reason is that a lot of the characters that did not have invincible reversals were balanced in a way that they were much stronger in other areas. Like you take a character like Karen, who had her 4-frame standing light kick was +3 on block. We're talking season 1 here. Kept her in throw range and led to her medium attack frame traps, which also kept her very close and were very damaging.
Absurd.
She was, if you look at like her strengths, she was strong in footsies, very strong up close, and probably her only weakness was that she needed to use meter to do a reversal.
Anti-air? Well, her anti-airs were pretty, and they're not the greatest, but she has them.
Right, so she needed to use meter to anti-air and to do a reversal. So the act of her having to use meter balances her because she's so strong in other areas. Now, flip that to someone like Ryu, where he's a zoner with fireballs who's trying to use fireballs as a poke and anti-air you with his invincible dragon punch, and then occasionally use it on wake up. Now, in Street Fighter V, fireballs overall are probably the weakest that they have ever been in a Street Fighter game, considering the amount of anti-fireball moves, like V-skills that instantly go through fireballs. You have armor moves that travel near full screen, like Laura's EX elbow. Another V-skill example.
She has a command grab that can also do the same thing.
Yeah, then like Balrog's V-skill that just easily press 2 buttons. So there's already a lot of systems in place that diminish the playstyle of a character like Ryu. Like, it's already weakening his ability to zone. So
I would also add that if somebody jumps in on you, because of the way the knockdowns work, it also discourages you from throwing fireballs, because the reward for getting a right jump in is so high. Not just because of the damage, because of the opportunity that also happens.
Yeah.
And your reward for getting a fireball is like negligible almost.
Right.
They throw a fireball at you, you get hit by it. Okay.
So
you get the Saitama okay face.
So basically, there's a lot more opportunities to knock down Ryu, where it's not that easy to knock down someone like Karen, who has the stronger footsie game overall. So someone like Ryu having an invincible DP was just his option to get you off if you get in. And it was risky at that. It wasn't a free decision. It wasn't like he had to put a risk and some thought involved. Like, hey, if this DP gets blocked, I might die. So that was already a balanced system in place. And then making it worse, it just kind of like buffed, inadvertently buffed characters that were already very offensive, such as grapplers and characters like Karen, even more when there were characters that were able to kind of like slow them down a bit. So that's
a big
why
change.
That feeling of like, oh, the offense has gotten nuttier or crazier kind of got amplified in season 2 when the DPs got nerfed. Even if it is just those 4 characters, but a lot of people did use those characters, and they're not as represented anymore in that aspect, particularly the Shotos.
There's a lot of things that happen when you put a new variable to something such as invincibility. When you have to use meter, if you don't have meter, then you don't have the option to use an invincible reversal. If you have a super, if you have 3 bars, and then you have to use meter to use something that's invincible, you then don't have a super after you use that meter. So it changed a lot of ways that you have to approach the match and managing that resource. Because now, if you want to use a DP, you have to burn a bar. You can't do it for free anymore.
So that's kind of my simple take on it is, you know, the system there was already enough systems in place to keep it balanced. So I didn't think they needed to make it even worse. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. I mean, there's more to the story than just taking away it's the whole interaction on Wake Up that's also, in my opinion, troublesome. Because you have 2 different knockdowns that also interact with each other. You might not even need a DP to punish somebody trying to meter your Wake Up. If they meter your normal recovery and you do a back recovery and they're in a recovery state for trying to whip to meter you, then you don't need a DP to punish them. The DP will also punish them, but it's not necessary to do it. Now the issue is with hard knockdowns such as Laura, where you don't have that choice to make your opponent guess on your knockdown on their. You have to use a meterless reversal or block, and then that really essentially that equates down to just guessing. So now you have to guess even harder, and it seems so strange to me that they are constantly taking away defensive options with the jump back OS, and they also took out the ability to V reversal and throw at the same time. So now you can't block and then V reversal and throw to break a throw or V reversal. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
Or jump back OS. Or DP that's not DP without meter.
Yeah, and to speak on that a little bit, because it all kind of it's all tied in together. I'm unsure whether the removal of these OSs is more to like be part of the vision that they have for this game, or are they just responding to like complaints about people saying like, oh, this option select is too strong or whatever. Because I feel that if it's the latter, that's not really a good way to go about it, because if you actually play this game, you understand that because the defensive options are so weak overall, a lot of those OSs sprung up as a result. Like, they became necessary. Like, a lot of these mix-ups are very rough.
Yeah.
So you needed the OSs to just, you know, and these OSs were not invincible. Like, let's say something like a jump OS. All it did was it created another layer where it forced the offender to delay their string a little bit so that it could catch the pre-jump frames.
Yep.
But taking that away, it kind of just, all it did was remove another layer. And when you start removing layers, the game starts to look the same for more matchups and more players. I think that's actually a bad thing. And I feel like the developers are not actually playing the game. I'm sorry to say it that way,
I'll finish that laugh later. I got
necessary.
So I think there is a struggle between, now that you mentioned this really gave me an idea. There's a struggle between the game philosophy and the audience, the people who are playing the game. So it's like they're trying to please the biggest market is people who are in gold, silver. That's where they're making their money, to be honest with you.
Right.
So they have to please those people. And I think there might be a conflict of pleasing those players and pleasing their game philosophy, how they intend for the game to be played. Because they probably don't intend for Jump Back OS. They probably don't intend for Universal OS. But they have to also please that audience. So how can we do both? How can we figure out a way that's going to make everybody happy and be in line with the way we feel the game is supposed to be played? And then once they find that middle ground, what they perceive as the right decision, it conflicts with people like me and you who feel like this is what's interesting. This is what is making the game playable for us. This is what actually is keeping us involved, and it has more to offer in this way. And we're just making it harder and harder to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, man. You also feel so disconnected to the development of the game and where their thoughts are and what they are actually trying to accomplish. But I mean, we do got some. I mean, I don't want to knock on Capcom, man. I don't want to say only bad things, because there's certainly a lot of good. I wouldn't be talking to you right now if it weren't for Capcom, if it weren't for Street Fighter.
Right.
I think there's a lot of good people who work in the esports, like Damon, Combo Fiend, Haunts. They're all really. Man, I love those guys. They're really great.
Yeah.
But as far as the development side of this game, we feel so like those guys are reachable. I feel like I can come up to Combo Fiend and talk to him about anything, you know? But as far as who's making the game, I don't know. Born Free made the same point. Like, who's doing it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's the person?
Yeah, so there's certainly a disconnect with the development team of this game and the end user of this game. So I think that there should be some sort of like I think they used to do this before, but maybe do this a little bit more frequently, like developer journals, or kind of like where they could post logs of why they make some of the changes that they do. And other games do this, like a really notable game that does that they do videos explaining all the changes that are applied to the game is Overwatch. And whenever they do a big update to that game, they do like a video series explaining, like, all right, this is why this hero was buffed, and this is why this hero was nerfed, or this particular gun, or whatever. They just kind of like explain the direction that they're going. But, with Street Fighter, they just kind of like release a change log and then don't say really why. They just kind of, that's it. That it is what it is.
I feel like they do a little bit, but it doesn't communicate it well, for sure. But we don't have a method of how things are supposed to be in the first place. I think that's one of the Capcom's biggest. Maybe it's not their problem, right? You don't have a lot of Tekken, like Tekken doesn't even have a tutorial in it, but right. You have the community involvement that helps teach people, that helps players learn how to play the game, and that's what I feel like Street Fighter is lacking severely. I think there is a highly damaged area where you don't know how to play Street Fighter. You don't know how to get it. Who do you go to learn how to play this? I'm trying to do it. You're trying to do it. But, I mean, is there a resource that Capcom is like, you know what I'm saying? Really helping other people get into their game. I think they're doing a great job at the esports. That's one thing I can say. The Capcom Pro Tour is fantastic in what it's trying to accomplish. But is that really bringing people to the game? And if it is, when they get to the game, are they sticking with it? And is it because they don't know how to play it? Is that why? Or is it because they're not having a good experience? Are they not having a good experience because they don't know how to play it? So there's something in between filling that gap where I feel like there's a huge disconnect between the information that we have for this game and our enjoyment of the game.
Right.
So, I mean, that was in conclusion, Meterless DPs. I really don't have a feeling, honestly. I want there to be more stuff. Just have more stuff that we can... More stuff and then less... forced, it's like I feel like I'm supposed to play it a certain way, and it's hard to have like a unique approach for Street Fighter V.
Right.
And something like a Meterless DP, it's a variable that also contributes towards making it harder to express yourself. You feel so much confined to the rules of the game. So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Meterless DPs, it's just a variable, but I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy the whole philosophy of the knockdowns, but that's just how it is. What do you think? What would you prefer in terms of meterless DPs?
I want to see them come back just because I think it added another layer having more options like that. And just because of like just a simple hype factor out of it, man. Like it's risky, but some people do it anyway. And then like you have your players that are really, I guess, nutty, crazy with the way that they decide to use that move. But then you have some other players that, it's kind of crazy, but there's also like a deep level of calculation involved. Like someone like JiBbo, who, he hits those umeshoryus and, you don't know if is he thinking, is he not thinking, but then you do know that his success rate is high. So you start to question, like, wow, this guy is like has a different way of thinking, with such a crazy move.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that element is gone is just like I said, it's a removed layer. It's for lack of, I wish I had a better way to explain it, but it's just not quite the same with EX DP. Maybe because it's not a single hit. I don't know. It's just something about knowing that he might do it when he has a meter. Makes it like kind of like predictable, I guess.
It's like disheveled. You're even trying to explain it.
Yeah. It was just definitely more exciting when it was meterless, for sure. I know that for sure. It was more exciting.
Oh man, it's a classic feeling, man. You go to Super Turbo, Blanca or Ihana does a headbutt or a whatever ball at you, you uppercut them, it feels good.
Yeah.
And then you still have the argument, right? Oh, it's still in the game. They're invincible after frame 3. Yeah, it also lags. It also lags.
Exactly.
And it's not invincible in the first frame, too. Man, I was playing... I mean, I want to get to the next subject about Zeku, but just one anecdote about Sanford. I was playing Sanford maybe it was the last time... I was playing Urian at NLBC one time. I was playing against Sanford. Sanford playing... Sanford playing Ken, and I jump at him a few times, and he does that classic look at his stick like... Yo, why can't I DP? I see the anti-air.
Yeah.
Like, bro, you gotta let it go sometimes. It's not, it's a different game, bro. And I feel so bad because he's such a talented player. He should be good at Street Fighter.
Yeah.
I totally believe him, but it's just against his instinct because you're so confident in being able to anti-air somebody. Yeah. It's like the oldest thing in the book to be able to dragon somebody if they jump at you.
Yeah.
But they damaged that. They made it so... It made it so difficult to do. Daigo doesn't even play Ryu anymore.
Yeah. It's definitely a different game currently than what it was. I hope they bring a little bit of the old flavor back, just to kind of add that layer back.
Okay, so we got a new character coming out in Zeku, and as you guys know, me and Javits, we are pretty quick to establish what is good about a character, what the potential is, and what you can do, and that kind of thing. I almost have a tradition of not looking into any material before I have the character in my console. So I really have limited knowledge on how the character, anything. I know some things here and there, but I'm going to have to divert this over to our fellow Labro here.
Okay, so first thing I'll say, besides even actual gameplay, I really, really like the direction that they went with Zeku visually, in terms that, the first time we ever saw Zeku in the Street Fighter universe was in Guy's Ending, and he pretty much just looked like a Guy clone. He had the same gi with different hair and older. It was pretty obvious he was his master, but you didn't really know anything about him. So, there have been the rumors floating around for probably the last year that he was going to be in the game, and now he's finally here. And the way they presented him was actually really cool. They gave him like a fancy new costume, but not just the costume, but the fact that they added to him that he can turn young and that he looks like Strider. I think nobody was expecting that. And that's where I think is like where they really hit the ball out of the park with his visual design, in terms of like they tied him into the Strider lore, because people are starting to think, hey, is he the first Strider? Is he one of the Striders? He definitely jumps like him, moves like him. So
I think I saw Graham. One of his move name is called Graham, and it looks exactly like when Strider does the sword move in MVCI.
yeah, it's
Except he kicks.
yeah, the old Zeku has like these kicks that they function pretty much just like Strider's Grams, and they even make the sound, and they're called Gram. So, what's cool about it though is about now I'm gonna get into his moveset, is that so Zeku being Guy's master, you expect him to have a lot of the same moves, but what they did was they took some of Guy's moveset and took a little bit of the moves and left them with old Zeku, and most of the moves they put him with young Zeku. So young Zeku is a lot closer to Guy than old Zeku is, but old Zeku still does have some of the moves. Like he has the Bushin flip that is from Guy, and he also has the Crouching Fierce, which is from Guy on the old Zeku, but then the young Zeku has the target combos, he has the run stop, he has the slide.
An overhead, apparently.
Yeah, they both have overheads. So I think it's really cool that they didn't like go too far in one direction. Like they didn't just lazily say, okay, we'll just make young Zeku Guy and old Zeku a new character. It kind of you kind of have to be able to learn both old Zeku and young Zeku if you're trying to use Guy's moves. So I thought that was really cool.
In order to switch between them, you have to use his V skill. Am I correct?
He has multiple ways actually. As far as I know, he has a special move where you press down, and 2 punches, and he just like throws a puff of smoke into the ground, and he immediately turns into the other form. So that's one way to transform, and it's pretty good because it doesn't have a lot of total frames. It's pretty fast. It's a lot faster than like Urian's V skill or Alex's V skill. I gotta say it's at least half. It's about half the total frames is that. So you could definitely switch between old and young and neutral without risk of dying. and then he also has the V skill, which is an attack, and then at the end of the attack he transforms to the other form. So he
I can see that right here, I think.
Yeah, so and then he can also transform mid combos. So he can do like, let's say, standing fierce, which is a heavy attack, the transform special, and then after the special, like combo into a light kick into a special move or something. So he has multiple ways to switch between old and young, and it's cool that the old and young have different strengths. So like the old Zeku is more of like long range fighting, and he has an invincible reversal, so he's more of a zoner. Then young Zeku is more like Guy, like he has the run stop, he has like the 3-frame jabs, he has like the target combos. He's more like in your face. So
this character is like Alex Valle, man. I think they might have legitimately thought about Alex Valle as they were making this character, because he looks like Alex Valle. And Valle used to play Guy. He used to play Guy back in Alpha 3 or something like that.
Yeah, I know Valle has a Guy experience, so it wouldn't surprise me if they took some influence from Valle when making him. But overall, I'm really happy with his design. There's probably a reason why they saved him for last. His theme is great, also. Tying in the Strider lore, normals look good, specials look good. He seems to have good damage so far, so everything's looking like a plus so far. But hey, we'll never know until he fights Balrog and Lara how he really is in the game yet. So
I like how that's the conclusive thought. So yeah, all of this detail, and he's got a lot of good things to offer. Invincible reversal, his V skill, it's better. It's good. You can go, but what we really want to know. Can he deal with the bullshit?
Yeah, and hopefully he can, but we'll have to wait and see on that.
That's going to depend on if he has good movement, if he has a invincible reversal, as you said he does, if he gets good reward off of it. He does have, I just saw he has a V reversal that knocks down. It's one of the hitting V reversals, so that's also good against Balrog and Lara.
Yeah.
It should be alright. I mean, it's really going to depend on the neutral as well, what kind of tools he has. I mean, it looks like he has an overwhelming moveset. I saw there's like a long list, but most of that is just chain combos, and then it's like showing another button down the chain and what you can do. It's not that overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's I have been kind of craving to play a character with stances. Like I've been like you just get random thoughts during the day. It's like I kind of miss playing Gen and like going between the different stances and then because you want to do things that other people can't do. You want to be unique and start. Like I've worked hard on this and there's the product of my hard work. And maybe Zeku has that to offer.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like all the new characters are unique. They're fun. They're interesting. Colleen, I do have some enjoyment playing. But I feel like I figured out the meat and potatoes of those characters in about 2 weeks at most. Like, okay, I know how to play Abigail. I know how to play Minot, Colleen. I know how all these characters are work. I can do some fine tuning and find some things here and there. But overall, I feel like I just figured out the characters very quickly, and I hope that's not necessarily the case with Zeku.
Yeah. Yeah, he does seem to have a little bit more to offer in that department, and like you said, for the Gen fans also, he does have a completely different moveset in terms of normals and specials when he's in old and young mode. So there's definitely that. I think he's a great addition to the cast right now, and he's animated really good too. So
seems like he's well received too. I do think the DLC content from Capcom lately has been pretty good. There's always, you can. I think Ultra David and James Shin had a discussion on this and whether DLC is worth it, and they compared like the inflation cost of playing an arcade, that sort of thing, and how much games used to cost. Overall, I think the DLC content has been pretty good. I think they have. Whether you're getting your money's worth or not, I do think it's a quality product. I think it's good.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it. Come on, if it was free, everyone would love it. It's just the fact that you got to contribute something.
Yeah.
And people automatically have a disdain for Capcom for valid reasons or not. So it's hard to justify. I already paid for this way. Give me money. You owe me because this game was not complete. It's a beta. It's not even till blah 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 blah. The game's finally coming out in AE, right? Why isn't this free? But in any case. Do you have any closing thoughts on Zeku or anything you want to... Because we can do questions. If you have time, we can get a few questions.
Yeah, we can get a few questions. I think my closing thoughts on Zeku is that it's interesting that he came, at this time of the year when they're already working on Arcade Edition, which is going to have, some different mechanics. And so the Zeku that we're going to experience for the next month and a half or so, he might be... not totally different, but he's going to be in a different environment very soon. So I wouldn't put too much weight on judging him as a character, considering that he's going to be in a totally different environment 2 months from now. Let's say they universally decide to buff V-Reversal.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
He's going to be short-lived. V-Reversal sucks, and they decide to universally buff V-Reversals, then you can't really say that his V-Reversal sucks when he's going to be in a different environment very shortly.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier with V-Reversals. Well, we didn't talk about this. We talked about Jump Back OS and the V-Reversal Throw OS. But we didn't talk about how they nerfed V-Reversals. They used to have... most of them used to have frame advantage as you dash up to your opponent. Now, in most cases, you don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
So, you're saying there's a case that Zeku will just be a few months worth of a character, and then the game is going to perhaps change, and then he won't be the same.
Yeah, he could turn much worse or much better.
Really
we don't know. That's hard to... judge. It depends on, how these new V triggers are. What kind of system changes are they going to do? Are crush counters going to be the same as they are now? It's a lot of different things that we have yet to see or get information on. So I would say, try to find as much as you can with Zeku now, but just have fun with him. Have fun, enjoy the character. I wouldn't put too much weight on how strong or weak he is just yet, because he's going to be in a different environment very soon.
You made me think earlier, I forgot to mention when we were talking about meterless DPs. I was thinking, what if you took away a lot of the damage potential away from crush counters, but you emphasize that you get the V-trigger? Because the V-trigger mechanic is so powerful anyways, to add the damage on top of it, maybe that's what's absurd about crush counters. Because you get such high levels of damage and you get the V-trigger bar.
Right.
So what if you add focus? What if you get a full bar for V-trigger, but you don't get a lot of damage? Like, say you hit him with the crush counter and that's it. What do you think about that?
That would be an interesting thought, but I think it would probably require adjustment to how strong the V-triggers are themselves, because they're already pretty strong. So
You could also adjust your combo. You can do a combo that kills them, but not crush counter them because you just want to do more damage.
Yeah.
Or you could do a crush counter combo to like invest in your V trigger mechanic for later in the match.
Yeah, so that might be an interesting route, whether if they do something like that, where like they make you choose whether you want to build V trigger and get damage or get damage, not both. I think that's a very good idea. Actually, I never even thought.
Juiceman says that would lead to more set play. I think you would just go for knockdown every time. But then you're not getting, if you're going for the knockdown every time, then you're not getting V-trigger. So now you're nerfing that aspect of the comeback mechanic.
Right.
So it does balance out a little. Because you're going for the knockdown every time anyways when you do the crush counter. I don't want to go into detail just for like a random thought too much because I want to move on. I know you got a day. I have a loose schedule. I just got to do homework,
Yeah,
Make
yeah,
a
yeah.
YouTube video or two. So we can get with some questions. Let's see what we got here. I love Colleen as well. So disappointed in Capcom not giving a shit about her. I mean, she has gotten one. I was about to take this like as in, okay, yeah, we're gonna talk about her 6-frame standing medium punch, and he's like, no, she just got one costume. That's it. But I mean, she's not Chun-Li, man. She hasn't been around. Nobody really knows Third Strike like that. So I mean, Colleen's great. I don't think she's a bad character, but I think everything else is just very powerful. Which could also, she might end up like Laura did in Season 2. Where Season 1, she wasn't nearly as bad as people thought. But when they started taking away DPs, when they like the V reversals, that kind of thing, that's when she became more explosive. And Laura players just got better.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Let's see. Phantom Noel asks, do you think a character with no mix-ups can be strong in the current meta? Hypothetical question. Do you want to take this one?
No mix-ups? Short answer, no.
That's a hard question to really put together. I mean, I feel like with that kind of question, you just gotta figure out what the goal, what they're really trying to ask is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think if a character, because it depends on what you consider a mix-up. Like some could argue that Ed is a character without real mix-ups because you can just down back and tech everything technically, but the reality shows that he does have options, albeit risky ones like random EX cycle upper. But it depends on the character design. Honestly, short answer is no. Long answer, it would depend on how the character, what kind of moves they have. That
you really have to define what a mix-up is.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if your idea of mix-up is that I can't block, so I get command grab. So if they do an immediate attack and then I try to jump away from the command grab, or then I do a DP, it solves everything. But if they block and if they're blocking, if that's your idea of mix-up, then it's kind of it's a fair assessment, but it doesn't encompass everything. So like then if you're just emphasizing on neutral, so then why can't a mix-up be between I'm hitting a slower button to crush counter you and then doing a faster button to whip punish you? Why can't that be considered a mix-up? Because it's all based on decisions, like and how they happen.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's hard to really define what is a mix-up. You know what I mean? So Nino is King asks, do you see a correlation in Street Fighter V and MVCI in terms of Capcom's direction in fighting games? Correlation in both games. And as a follow-up, is it because of esports and that is hurting the product and gameplay? Is there a correlation? I think there is a desire from Capcom to capitalize on that arcade feeling, because we were the first people to do it. Honestly, Street Fighter was the first people to have somebody against each other, as far as I know. And then people would watch it, and people would get excited, and then you would see arcades full of bodies, shoulder to shoulder, cheering. I mean, you experienced this even more than I have in like Chinatown Fair. But we came from that, and to try to bottle that and then present it to other people, that's totally sound logic. I can see why they would want to have that as a viewership spectator thing. But it seems like the focus is on that feeling rather than what's generating that feeling in the games, and what's really creating that. I think it's hard to duplicate that. It's really difficult to. It's like bottling thunder, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think the attempt is extremely valuable. I was gonna say honorable for some reason, like there's samurais defending Street Fighter, but it's like, how much is that influencing the way the game plays? That's so tricky. That's such a hard question, because I think they want more people to play it. The simple fact is you need more money, and I don't have really well researched. I don't want to speak out of school here, but I don't think there's any money in fighting games. So I think you have to introduce new players to get more sponsorships, to get more bigger tournaments. So in a way, I do feel like they should find ways to encourage more players. But maybe the route that they're taking is faulty. Maybe they're making mistakes and they're learning from them. But as of right now, I do feel like the games are influenced by the players who aren't the tournament players. But they have to have to cater to everybody. You know, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So we can see what else. Do you think they will take out throw loops? No. No.
I don't see them taking out for everybody. That was an interesting question though, but maybe they might lower the damage from throws or maybe lower the stun. I think that if they're gonna keep a character with a throw loop, I think they should probably lower the stun maybe, or.
Remember when we thought throws were trash? When throws were no good in Street Fighter V? Why would you ever throw somebody? They don't do any damage. You can't get a knockdown. Now it's like, oh shit, I'm in the corner. I hope Karen or Ken doesn't throw me. I hope Nikali doesn't command grab me.
Yeah, and one of the things that, because, that question ties into other mechanics possibly changing in Street Fighter V AE. Because one of the things that's consistent with all other Street Fighter games is that the throw invulnerability window on wake up is always longer than the fastest light attack. So that always gives you a window where you could wake up with a button and not be thrown for it.
Oh.
It's like
so you mean if you...
So yeah, so you can't immediately be thrown. So in Street Fighter V, you have only 2 frames of throw invulnerability, and your fastest attack is 3 frames. So even if you wake up with your 3-frame button, you can still be thrown.
You get thrown out of it.
Yeah, whereas in Third Strike or ST, you cannot be thrown out of your fastest light attack on wake up.
Yep. And you can't mash you can't mash those light attacks. So if you did put that in Street Fighter V, it would be very powerful because you can always get the frame 1 3-frame light attack that'll beat the throw.
Yeah.
So that would also make people mash tab on wake up even more.
Yeah.
But it's hard to attack these kinds of questions in the context of just one thing because there's so many other factors that influence the way you feel about a throw when it happens. If you get thrown mid-range by somebody, if you get thrown by Ryu, who cares?
Yeah.
But if you get thrown by Ken in the corner and he does a frame kill to another throw, you're like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
So let's see what else we got. And of course, there's more things to it than just that. Colleen is still probably bottom 5. I don't necessarily agree, but maybe. I mean, you can still be bottom 5 and still be a good character if the game is balanced enough. Let's see. I think he means character that is rushed down. Oh, so okay. So I think the previous question maybe was about a character like Laura, character like Mika. Without those characters, do you think what would the game be like? I don't know. It's really still my answer was still sufficient for that. Do you have any other additional thoughts about command grab characters, that kind of thing?
One thing
it looks like you drew a blank for a second.
Yeah,
no. Flush the question.
One thing I would say with the command grab characters, I think their risk reward needs to be adjusted a little bit. I think command grab characters are the strongest that they have ever been. So for like a character like Laura, if they want her to have that many mix-ups, they definitely need to like tone down the damage or the stun. If that's how they want her to play, I don't think the reward should be as big. But if they want the reward to be as big, then they should probably reduce the amount of opportunities that she could get to be in those situations.
Yeah. So Kraymore, what's going on, man? He asks, what do you feel about crush counter in neutral? Would it be reasonable for crush counter mechanics to exist only on first active frames of heavy attacks? Would it be reasonable for crush counter mechanics to exist? So, how do you feel about crush counter in neutral?
I'm not a fan of crush counter in neutral. I think that crush counters that lead to full combos should be relegated to DP punishes. And, they could probably implement the crush counter system in neutral in a different way. Like how some normals knock down or they juggle you and you get like a limited follow up, but I don't think you should get a full grounded follow up on the ground while playing footsies. I don't think.
You mean hard punch, Urian, dash up, crouching fierce?
Yeah. I don't think that's good design.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But you could fix that. You could fix that without even touching. I think there's many solutions to this kind of this sentiment. You could just help the frame data in footsies so that there's more emphasis on using something like a sweep to actually whiff punish. You can make it so that the crush counter buttons are more whiff punishable. Because now if you're doing a hard punch and you're getting whiff punished every time, then you were like, well, I guess I can't whiff this button anymore. But now it's encouraged to do that because the reward is so high and the risk is so low because it's difficult to whiff punish it.
Yeah.
And if you're whiff punishing a whiffed crush counter attack, you're not going to crush counter though because you're whiff punishing it. You're getting a knockdown at best. You might be able to get a few things here and there that are unique. But overall, them doing this haphazardly gives them so much reward.
Yeah.
So the crush counter in neutral, it's like an experiment on how. It's like let's see how much our audience can tolerate. How much dumb shit they can really survive through, and then we'll adjust the parameters if they don't like it. And I don't really like it, to be honest. So the other part of that question was, would it be reasonable for crush counter mechanics to exist only on first active frame of a heavy attack? So really, what that's saying is that if your moves collide, say you do a move where it has one active frame and then the second and third active frames reach further, at that point, then maybe it'll trade instead of a crush counter, or maybe it'll just out prioritize and not crush counter.
Yeah, I think that's a better than what the current system is, but it still allows for the possibility of random hit into full combo, and I think that needs to go completely. In neutral.
It also takes away from, maybe to the benefit of the player or not, it takes away from meaty heavy attacks. So something like Akuma's crouching hard punch. If he's not able to crush counter you on the fourth active frame on your back recovery, then you might be more inclined to try something else. You might be more inclined to back recover than normal recovery because then you have more frame advantage. But he won't be able to crush counter you if you do that meaty on the later active frame. So That's another interesting note if that's the case.
Yeah.
How would you? Of course, Demon Dan. How would you guys buff Alex to make him more viable? How would you buff Alex? So I think that Alex is this close to being Laura. Worse than Laura. I think he's this close. So I think you need it. I think you can leave Alex alone, change the game in some way, and then he'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of unique approaches to fixing characters. But Alex might be functioning, quote unquote, as intended.
Yeah. Personally, I like the way Alex functioned in season 1 a little bit better, just because he had better footsie normals. So he was able to to defend himself better in the neutral, and he didn't have the greatest defensive options, but at least you knew that you could prevent someone from knocking you down as much as they're able to now, because his neutral got worse with the slower buttons.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird decisions that they make in certain characters, right? So, for example, Urian, his standing medium kick and his crouching medium kick, it's like it's almost like they got lost in translation due to we gotta just nerf things. Because before it was like, okay, I can use standing medium kick because it's it has the same, I forgot, I don't even remember the stats or how they are anymore. But it was like crouching medium kick was just better because it hits low and standing medium kick just reached further. But I think the startup was the same. And then they made crouching medium kick have advantage on block. Why? So why would I ever use standing medium kick now?
Yeah.
And now they nerf crouching medium kick again. And so some of the decisions that they make for normals don't really make sense to me, at least, in terms of what the character already has and what other characters already have.
Yeah.
So some of the decisions on what Alex has, it's really hard to understand. Why would they make him slower?
Yeah.
So NB Silent Shadow, he's got quite the question to tackle. I don't know if I can really process this. I'm pretty good at taking information and then getting new ideas once I understand that information. But as far as that learning process, I'm pretty slow. I'm not that good. I have a lot of, like, my creative process is great, but my learning speed is pretty average. So a question like this, I don't know if I can just on the fly address it. So he's talking about like adjusting the throw invulnerability and changing the priority system. So I'll read it out loud. He says, here's an idea. Make throw invulnerable after wake up, hit, block. 4 frames rather than 2 frames. Change the priority system so that it doesn't give a counter hit anymore. Hard punch trade with MP only gives a normal hit. Make recovery much slower, about a 15 frame gap from normal instead of 5, and increase the distance that they move back. And make sweeps prevent normal recovery, so that sweeps either give you space or a hard knockdown. That's a lot to think about. I mean, those are all like separate questions, and then putting all of them together and understanding how all those things work, that's going to be even tougher to make a fair assessment on. I mean, we can look at it individually. Do you get that at all?
Yeah, I think individually would be better to look at those, because all of those together in one shot is kind of
a different game at that point.
A lot to process. So the throw invulnerability, I agree. That's exactly the number I think that it should be. It should be increased to 4 frames. It just kind of gives you that 4-frame buffer window. It doesn't eliminate throws out of the equation. It just gives you a little bit of breathing room where, you know, you can kind of like defend a little bit, not just guess between attack or throw.
Do throws, if throws and an attack happen, throws win. Throws have priority. Okay. So if it is 4 frames, then if your opponent wakes up with a 4-frame normal, you'll throw them out of it, right?
No.
So it's gonna, it'll happen on the same frame. So it'll happen on the same frame.
But
right?
No, but the thing is, the throw is, so you're invulnerable for 4 frames. Wait, let me think about that.
Yeah, I think if you have a 4-frame attack and then throw with that invulnerability, the throw will still beat the 4-frame attack. It'll lose to the 3-frame attack.
No, if you,
so that
it'll I think it might still beat the 4-frame attack might win, because it the first active frame was within the invulnerable period, the throw invulnerable period, so it would connect while it's still invulnerable.
Okay. I mean, if we're talking about intent, I guess the numbers aren't really that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But if that were the case, then then you would have a different. Then every character had like a different type of DP where they can mash on something and beat a throw. But if the intention is to just have it so that you can use a light attack that's 3 or 4 frames to beat the throw, then I guess we can go with that.
Yeah, and the reason why, so like you mentioned earlier that that would encourage more mashing on wake up, more mashing jab,
mm-hmm.
but on the other flip side, if you know that they're gonna more likely to press a button on wake up, then you have more opportunities to meaty. So all it does is create a mind game. But defensively, it's better for you because you're not always at risk for throw.
I can see how that would change the corner throw loop situation too, so that might be beneficial. So you would see less. You might see less. I think it's still the same thing, honestly. I was gonna say you might see less of someone like Punk throw looping in the corner with Karen.
Yeah.
But he still uses his attacks. You know what I'm saying? He still uses the meaty crouching medium punch into crouching medium kick. So if you're mashing, then that's gonna lose to that too. So I'm not sure if it's really gonna make the change that we kind of. I think it's addressing the feeling, but I'm not sure if it's really changing the way the game would be played in terms of that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Comparing it to, let's say, Third Strike. In Third Strike, some people get thrown repeatedly over and over. But knowing that they could have pressed a button, it just kind of eases the situation. Like, hey, you at least you had the option.
Yeah, on wake up.
Yeah.
That's a whole different. It's harder for me to compare it to Third Strike because there's so many different. There's other variables in Third Strike because the knockdowns are totally different.
Yeah.
Not every character. Some characters had the same thing, but you had the normal. You have like what's comparable to normal and back recovery, but those values differed per character. Mostly, some characters had like longer or shorter knockdowns, and then the distance between their normal and back recovery. Those were also different. So you had a character like Makoto who had the biggest difference. Like, this is something I started researching recently.
Yeah.
Makoto has the biggest difference between if she gets up quickly and if she doesn't get up. but Chun-Li stays on the ground for like the longest. The twins, they get up the fastest. There's so many different things like that that contribute to how are you able to actually meet your opponent.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun thing about Third Strike, is because I didn't know anything about that,
Yeah.
but I was still able to meaty my opponents. In Street Fighter V, I got to do like 15 frame kills just to double meaty 2 wake ups, and then if they don't do that, then I got to do this frame kill, and then I got to branch off and decide. In Third Strike, I can just do it based off of feeling.
Yeah.
So this problem that we're assessing in terms of just like trying to fine tune these minute details, it wasn't a problem in different games because of the way, like, we're trying to fix something that's internalized within the game. We're trying to address it. It's like we're trying to solve problems in a way that we might have the initial problem is already before that whole process. But I mean, I think we should fix that problem.
Yeah.
Is there anything else within that question that we should look at? It was a mouthful, to be honest. It was priority system. That's kind of what we talked about with Cray. Make back recovery much slower, about a 15 frame gap. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know about all that because that would just create double meaties, basically.
Yep. Because then, so if it's a difference of 15 frames, right now we have a 5 frame difference. So you can use a 4 active frame move or a 3 active frame move for 4 frame characters to meaty both of them. But then you're using the same attack. If you make it so that the back recovery is longer, you can do a light attack on one wake up and then recover from that light attack and then do another light attack to recover that back recovery.
Yeah.
But he's also saying that the distance will be further back. So then in that case, you can only do it in the corner.
Yeah.
But then again, if the distancing is increased, that might also imply that you're able to react to both of them. You might be able to see the normal recovery before you see the back recovery. So you would use something that's quick and then respond to with whatever knockdown it is. That's the struggle right now. It's because it's hard to tell the difference between normal and back recovery and react to both. So increasing that gap, it's really tricky, man. It's really tricky.
Yeah, I just think 15 is too long, 5 is too short, maybe somewhere in the middle. Maybe like a 10 frame difference, 8 frame, I don't know. Because right now the problem is that if you try to meaty, you could get punished. I think that.
Yeah, and it ruins that whole. It ruins that in maybe not a good way. So you're not able to do that. I mean, I'm not a fan of how you can just get off the ground and punish them for attempting to meaty you, but it's also like a balancing factor. They do that intentionally. I'm 100% sure that's part of why they made it that way.
Yeah.
So it's totally reversing that change and puts it in a totally different direction. So it's going to change a lot about the game if you do something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad question. It helps us understand different aspects of the game. You good, man? You got some... So our next question, should counter hit state be removed from backdash? I wouldn't mind that. That's not like a huge knob, right? We're not cranking the volume up to max. That's like a little, sure, why not?
I think that would be okay.
I would try it, but I don't know. I don't have like a strong opinion one way or another. It's not really a big... Is it?
It would change a lot of characters, though. Like Zangief, let's say Zangief does a standing heavy kick. He won't get a crush counter into EX Air SPD. Or Laura won't get, standing heavy punch into EX clap into heavy bolt. It would definitely nerf characters that capitalize on backdash punishes a lot.
I'm going to try to fire through these because I feel like we got to wrap this up. So, 1000 Star, do you think Street Fighter V needs a new defense mechanic and just block and V reversal, or do you believe it's fine? I'm all for it. If they can find something like a parry, something like a just defend, or emphasize more on the V reversal mechanics, then that'd be cool. I'm down with that. I'm more than willing to experiment with new options.
Yes, defensive option is good.
Thoughts on removing the input buffering? I might not get to all these questions because I'm going to try to wrap it up soon. We were going to do 20 to 25 minutes, and I'm sure it's been an hour or more. I need to look at my up. All right, what else we got? Removing the input buffer. It's selfish for me to say absolutely yes. I agree with the idea of making the game more accessible, but I think the philosophy of easy to play, difficult to master, I don't think this game is difficult to master. So if they can have both, the best of both worlds, make input buffering in the game and still make the game difficult to master, then absolutely keep it. But I don't know if that's really the... I see the argument too. I see how it's contributing towards people mashing and why it's encouraged to play that way.
I think the input buffer should somehow be removed for buttons on wake up and left for combos. Like that, you can do your combos
like
easily, but you can't wake up with buttons easily.
Oh, wake up! Like you really felt something. You felt something about it. Okay, let's see what else we got. Please no Yun in 5. What's up, Mitsuho? We're dwindling down. Do you think Street Fighter 5 needs a new? We talked about it already. Counter hit. Would a push block like Alpha Series and Virus will be too similar in functionality and quite push block is totally gonna go in a different direction. I mean, I like the idea of new things, but the push block is putting your whole character in a different position, and we don't know how it's gonna behave. If it's gonna be like MVCI, that kind of thing. So that's a whole different element to, you know, how the game currently plays. I don't know how drastic of changes they're willing to make, if any at all. Delayed throw taking another day will do. You see any questions you want to hit up?
No, I can't see the questions.
Oh, you're on your phone, right?
Yeah.
Phantom Null, what do you think? What do you guys think about making the person who techs the throw at a small advantage or allowing back recovery after throws? So, if you mean like frame advantage, we also have to look at distance, like where are they going to be at? Because if you have 20 frame advantage, but the throw break shoots you across the screen, then that 20 is a little bit negligible. But if you're close to them and you have like a frame or two, then that would be pretty cool. That's not a bad idea. So but then how do you determine? I think there already is something like this, isn't there? If you throw later, your character will be further away than your starting position than you originally would. I think that's in the game already. You know what I'm talking about? When you break a throw later?
That's actually a consequence of certain throw animations. It's not actually an intended system in the game. No, I'll explain. For example, Ryu's throw, he picks you up over his shoulder, and then your character model goes behind him at some point, and then he slams you down. That transition of your character going up to his shoulder causes both characters to move. So if you throw tech later, it shifts the original position of where your characters were. So it appears that the throw tech distance is greater, but it's actually not. It's just that it's teching from a different position.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand. So what do you think about... I mean, of course it's going to be +2, right? You're going to be +2. That's how it usually is.
Yeah.
If you break a throw on reaction, and maybe they can increase the throw break window by a little bit just to supplement this idea. If you throw break later, that's also going to affect your ability to react to things, right?
Yeah.
So if you are... A lot of people now, the reason why shimmy is so powerful is because they're guessing throws. They're not actually getting thrown.
Right.
Because you can't really react to a throw given how much the window is.
Yeah.
So if you're taking a throw within that window, it's going to cause you to whiff a throw. Or you'll be breaking the throw.
Right.
So is there something else? Is there something else that's going to encourage you to break a throw during that time frame where you would have frame advantage after the throw break? And that could also encourage more delayed offense in the knockdown game. So I don't think it's a bad idea.
I think it's a good idea.
It's going to have to be +1 or 2, probably nothing more.
Yeah.
Or maybe it can be more frame advantage, but you're further away. You can be like +5 or 6, but you're outside of throw, like much outside of. You're outside. You're like mid range at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool. So like if you're a Ryu and you tech a throw and you have enough advantage to do crouching medium kick into fireball or crouching medium punch into fireball, I think that's good. That creates a lot of space. It gives you a little bit of chip damage, a little bit of meter. Not a bad idea. I like it.
Yeah, I like it.
What else? Anything else? Ignore my question. What was it? Goal? How cool would it be to have a mechanic when you are able to break combos after a certain health threshold? It's too much like Killer Instinct. I think that's like clear. We're just gonna do like the combo breakers.
I don't like combo breakers. Not a fan of them.
After 50%
I'd rather damage
life
and stun be adjusted than making combos incomplete while you're getting hit. I don't like it. Not for Street
probably
Fighter.
a fun. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a fun thing to try out. I do want to play Killer Instinct, but it's hard to get into that game.
Yeah.
I think it's a good game. I know a really good player. But so the rest of this question was after 50% health, 50% life, you're able to break a combo at the cost of 2 CA bars or 2 VH. I don't know, man. It's like a little bit too. It's like you're changing the whole game at that point. Which, I mean, that's kind of what we want to do. It's hard to like please everything without turning it into something that it's not. So I think we have I don't know the word for it, but it's like we have a vision of what we want, but we don't know what that is. But we know what we don't. We know what we don't want. So it's hard to match up what we want in Street Fighter. We really don't know what that means. It's true. Like I feel like in Third Strike and CVS 2, we were in the same boat, but we didn't even have access to what they wanted and what they felt like the game was going to be. And a lot of things in those games were either totally underdeveloped, undiscovered, like S-Groove. I remember watching Dr. B play S-Groove in CVS 2. I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing what he's doing with that. But it probably still wasn't as good as K and Bucktooth and N-Groove. There's a lot of different things with those games that are totally undiscovered. But do we really understand the vision? I mean, roll canceling was for sure unintentional, but that became a staple part of the game and why it was fun. So it's hard to say now that they're intentionally designing Street Fighter, what's the right decision? It's hard. Let's see. Anything else? I'm gonna wrap it up pretty soon. In Street Fighter V, the character who text pushes a thrower back. Okay, so this is what you were talking about. Sorry, okay. That's about it, man. I'm good. Did you want to talk about MVCI or do you want to?
Nah, I'm good for now. I think we hit some pretty good points and the questions were good too. So
it was a great show. I think a lot. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
So I have no idea how to close this out, except I really appreciate everybody tuning in, having questions for us, and this is what I say in my YouTube videos. I hope you learned something, but I hope people not only learn something, but they also feel like they have something to offer now. Like, oh, now I know this thing. I have something else to get better ideas from hearing where we're generating our ideas from.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions for me after this, you could just shoot me a line on Twitter. I'm usually pretty active on that, and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. And I'm sure the same applies to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to do more content. It's been more of a school thing I've been focused on, but I absolutely need to make time for this and going to jail and all that stuff. So you can find Javits on Twitter at Javits. I mean, I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with this already, but the Twitter tags are up there on the screen. You can find me at AutoMattock. YouTube.com/JiBbo, JiBbo. I will be uploading this to YouTube. Maybe in a full chunk. Maybe I'll put in different sections, but we'll be improving the layers. We'll be doing more, all kinds of things. This podcast can go in many different directions, and I'm sure we can talk about more than just fighting games. And as far as the schedule, I like we haven't even talked about this between me and Javits yet, but I like the idea of when we're available and just doing it when maybe something comes up in the moment,
yeah.
And then it's like we got to talk about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Whatever we can do, I'd hate to have a schedule 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. and then every day, and then things come up and we're not able to, And we're gonna have guests on the show, I'm sure, and we can get some ideas on that. I put up a list of people that I would be interested in contacting. Like gentlemen such as Michael Na and maybe Tempa Bite. What's with your face? So thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'm AutoMattock.
I'm Javits.
And y'all have a good day.
Have a good day.
Take it easy.
Peace.